don't even know what we're going to talk about. So
I like when someone records Zoom gives you the option to leave. It's like, out of here. Protest.
The mad dash.
So what are we talking about today? More dope or?
Well, did you have any specific things that you wanted to talk about?
Go ahead, Jess.
There was this stuff about the poor.
Oh yeah, we could always talk about
like a
that
couple
too.
weeks ago.
Yeah, that's another topic we could go down. The only thing about Job that was kind of came to my mind, which you just brought it up, I think too, Sherry, right before Kyle left, with the would you condemn me that you may be just? But it seems because this verse sticks out to me where God's talking about the Leviathan, and he tells Job, there's one part, and he says, "Lay your hand on him, remember the battle," and that always kind of reminded me of I think Jordan Peterson when he talks about not getting resentful, like how you have Cain and bad stuff. How he'll talk about the story of Cain and Abel, and he'll be like, sometimes God just doesn't accept your offering, and you don't really know why, and you have this chance to get offended or something, and then and that's kind of I guess the reason it sticks out to me is because the last line of the Leviathan where it talks about he's king over, it says something weird like he's king over all the children of pride or something like that.
Mhm.
And so it's like you have this opportunity where you're confused to get offended at God or something, and it's kind of like you're wrestling with that giant serpent in those times to try to
I don't know what conversation it was that I had fairly recently. Maybe I don't know if it was with Jess or if it was with Nate and Jed or what, but I said something like your childishness needs to be offended at some point. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. But if you think about it, it's kind of what Jess was talking about when he talked to you about initiation ceremonies, right? Where no, you don't get to hang from the teat, you know, and so yeah, you have to be, you have to. I don't know. I kind of like the word offended there because whatever happens after that is an offense to you, right? And but that's part of that withdrawal. So in your own life, you know, your parents withdraw, right? And let you grow up, so to speak. But then you get to reintegrate it later on in your life. The childishness. Oh, I know it was no, I can't remember what conversation it was, but you know, hopefully you still have access to that, right? And you get to reintegrate it. Like this is what Douglas Harding's 4 stages of life is about, really.
So the getting offended is kind of like a leaving the house or turning your back and going out and kind of finding yourself, kind of part of the U-shaped journey or something.
I mean, you see it in the wild with animals, you know, they send away the young, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that and they offend them in order to get them to leave. You have to.
See.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
They have to. The baby deer has to feel some kind of offense. It has to be strong enough that he's not coming back because mommy's going to hurt me if I do, you know? It's pretty strong. That's why I think the word offense works the best. It's not an encouragement. It's not like, oh, you know, you can do this and I'll be there for you, like that. It's like, get lost and don't come back.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. That's good. That's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Our neighbors, when I was like a teenager, they found a little deer that had been left. So the older son had brought it to the house, and they like fed it milk and stuff, and raised this little deer. They thought it was a girl, so they called it Daisy May. ended up it was a boy, so they changed the name to Davy Ray. But it just started it like I mean, it lived in the house for a long time, and then like as it got bigger, it would go outside and it'd come back in, and then like eventually they just like they would leave the door open for it, and it would go out and come back because food was here and stuff. Eventually, like it would just go further and further, and then come back less and less, be gone for days, and come back for a couple days, and then eventually it just left and never came back.
Mhm.
Just about at the time that it should have.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me when you were talking about that, Sherry, that brought this up to Craig, I think, the other day, because we were talking about kind of that theme of where the mother has to die or something. And then in Bambi, I just remember there's not much dialogue in that movie. And there's that one scene where his mom gets shot, and all his dad shows up, and all his dad says to him is just, "Your mom can't be with you anymore." And then it's just like walks off, and I was just like, ouch, man. And he's just stuck. He's got to figure it out. Yeah. But it seems to
Yeah.
happen in stories often. Either the mother dies, or it's like you're thrust out of the womb, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about the poor that you wanted to talk about, Jess?
I don't know. Jason mentioned something about the poor a couple weeks ago. I can't remember specifically what the.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of the idea of and Luke Johnston. I mean, I know you know him, Sherry. He brought it up before of like just him. He might be. It might be too late to send him an email now. I could, but he might be busy. But he had mentioned he had been to Africa before as well, and just seeing how the people live there who have very minimal stuff. And when one of your guys' conversations, when you were talking about Job, you had mentioned something similar to that. You were on a topic for a little bit about just learning from people that have less, and how you can learn a lot from people that are actually in poverty. Um, and so it was just kind of that idea. There's this song, and I don't even know that I like the song or any of the lyrics to it, but the title of it was always "Lessons from What's Poor," and that just kind of popped into my head. And I was like, that might be a fun topic to get on and just see um, from what your guys have experienced in your life, and what you've been around and engaged in, if you've what you've learned from people in poverty, I guess, like just observing them. Or
Well, what was funny is like we were talking about the like we were talking about the poor, and then it was talking about my experience in like some poorer areas of the world, because I've been to like the Philippines and India and some places where there's places of extreme poverty. And so I started I think I was when me and you, Sherry, we were talking about the Philippines, and I brought up Smoky Mountain, which is that trash dump outside of Manila. And so I was trying to use it as an example, but as I told the story and thought about it, I was like, those poor people were not happy. They were not like, and I had to rethink. I was like, that's not the right example, because they were actually miserable, and like there were kids running around and stuff, and like
Probably a lot of
of course
shit.
the kids were happy to see us, and like they were kind of running around and making jokes, and we were playing around with them and stuff. I was like 13 at the time. But then then I thought of that. An example was, it was in Manila, but it wasn't on Smoky Mountain. It was in what do they call it? Like a squatter village, like where people just, they don't own the land. They just started building, and so it's like a whole just wall to wall little huts and stuff that people manage to piece together from tin and wood and cinder blocks and all kinds of stuff, and then they splice up into the power lines and run some power cables down, and like everything's just sort of whatever people can manage. But there were some lovely people there that were so kind to us, Christian Filipinos, that that brought us into their little home and showed us around, and were, you know, they were extremely poor, but very, I don't know, just great, like lovely people, like really good people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I remember in those squatter villages, like just like, of course there was like alcohol abuse and drugs and stuff and crime that was, up around, but there was, it wasn't like, that you see in somewhere like, I don't know, in like, what's that place down in LA, the just the drug ridden um area where people are
That place
camping.
down in LA, I think it's everywhere now,
Well,
from what I've heard.
what's that place called? It's anyway,
I don't
like
know.
there was actually like pockets of actual community and actual people that were joyful and would eat together and
Yeah.
uh, stuff like that, which, you know and they were very poor. And then, comparing that to, you'll have American or Western suburbs with people that are, very wealthy and just miserable in their houses all by themselves, isolated from each other. And um
I think
yeah.
they can afford to, you know, like there's varying degrees, or not degrees, but states of poverty. Let's put it like that, something like
Mhm.
that, where you have like maybe you live in a material poverty where you don't have a home or whatever. But you can also live in like a psychological poverty or spiritual poverty,
Mhm.
and um I remember that conversation that we had on about the poor, and one of the things that we were talking about during that was gratitude, and how a lot of people who are materially impoverished just have like an excessive amount of gratitude for the littlest things, any little thing that just makes life easier or enriches their life in some way, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I know that a little bit just from living on the land. Like, you can be so grateful for a certain garden tool that you recently acquired, and all of a sudden everything is easier. Usually it has a lot to do with that, making your life easier, right? More comfortable. But I think that even the rich can be impoverished, right? In that they're psychologically and spiritually impoverished, and can also therefore show a lot of gratitude for um receiving the thing that they need that makes their life easier or more
Mhm.
comfortable, right? Whether it's spiritual or psychological.
Yeah, I worked for a lawyer. Um, it was for this business, but she was hired on staff, and I was working with her with a small team. And her husband was also a lawyer. He had his own practice. They're very wealthy. Um, and she was the most grateful, one of the kindest people I've ever met. Like,
Mhm.
she was she was wonderful in every way. Like, in like this is how wealthy she was. She had never been to a Target or a Walmart.
Right.
And like, we were like, when we found that out, we were like, you've never been to Target? Like, what do you go to get, like a pot or a pan? And she was like, Williams Sonoma. And that's like the fancy place where like everything's hundreds of dollars. and and uh and and she just lives like, there would be moments like that where I'm like, oh, you live in a different world than me. But
Yeah.
as far as like her as a person, like, she showed as much gratitude as that guy I was talking
Right.
about in the squatter village in the Philippines. They shared
Yeah.
they shared something in common.
Yeah.
It which seems to be that some aspect of gratitude, or generosity as well.
Yeah.
Um because like we would be brought into these little, we would go over to someone's house. Obviously we're Americans. They're in the squatter village in the Philippines, and then they would bring food to us. And like it's amazing. When I was in Costa Rica, we were out in this like tiny village, and I might have shared this, but we were there to have dinner with the people, and they brought out like a box of cornflakes because they thought that's that was like the only thing they thought of, like, what do Americans eat? We don't want to just feed them beans and rice. So like they brought cornflakes out. We ate cornflakes with them, and it was like the literal Kellogg's cornflake box. And the pastor afterwards told us, he was like, that box of cornflakes probably cost 10 times more than their normal meal.
Mhm.
Like they went out of the way to go to town, or when they were in town, they like try to find that. He's like, they can't afford that. He's
Yeah.
like,
Then
and
you got to eat all that with gratitude.
well, yeah, and I mean, I
I know,
kind
I'm
of
just
wish they
kidding.
would have just made rice and beans because I like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, same thing happened to me in India. It was like they want to know what I wanted to eat, and I was like, well, at home I do like cereal, and then they bring back cornflakes, and I was like, I kind of like your cooking better, but I was like,
right,
I don't know. Yeah.
it's funny. I even kind of remember that the pastor had told them and then not buy that, but we're not, like, you don't need to do that. And they're like, no, we have to, like, this will be better than just our food, because they kind of felt ashamed of like whatever they were, just chicken and rice or whatever. It was like, it's funny.
Cornflakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I like that story. Yeah, I think what you guys are talking about gratitude, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's that verse in Proverbs where he says, "These two I request from you: give me not before I die, give me neither poverty nor riches, lest I be full and deny you, or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God." But
Mm,
I mean, I think, like you're saying, I think you can be both and be grateful.
of
And
course.
yeah, I think it kind of gets at. I've been trying to go through the book of Ecclesiastes with Mitch lately. I think it kind of gets at what I think is kind of the heart of that book too, is where it just kind of, for me, that's what that book does, is it refocuses my vision, I think, on I think it's, I keep telling him, I'm like, to me it's the most meaningful book in the whole Bible, because it'll sit there and say meaningless, meaningless, or vanity of vanities.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but it's just, it refocuses my eyes on what's, on the things that are eternal, and not the things that are fleeting. And so you can be grateful for all the, like, the spiritual things like you're talking about. It's not even about necessarily, not necessary, I shouldn't say not about material things at all, but not necessarily that.
Well, I have to get on my soapbox about gratitude and humility because
Let's hear it. Do it.
well, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? What comes first, gratitude or humility? And I think to truly be humble, not in a false humility, because there is such a thing. I think that's realized when you are grateful. When you become grateful for everything that is happening in your life, and that, I mean, in the present moment, right, in the now, that's when you're truly humble in the best possible way, right?
Mhm.
Because it gets expressed in gratitude, and gratitude teaches you, when you have that posture of gratitude, I think it teaches you that everything is a gift. And so it's really out of your hands, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's really good.
you don't control anything anymore. You're not controlling anything. You're receiving.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. There's this, I heard it a long time ago, and I don't think it was true, but somebody told me once that the Hebrew people, sorry if the dogs are barking, they didn't have, someone told me the Hebrew people didn't have a word for mine, and instead of that it was to me. But I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to ask Jacob. But I kind of liked it though, because it was just like, you could look at everything and just say, instead of saying this is mine, you'd say this is to me. And it kind of for me, it creates this gratitude, because
Yes.
everything I'm looking at, every dollar I have is to me, and so uh, every breath I take is to me. It's all a gift.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's really
Yeah, my
important. I'm
sister
really
said
glad you brought that up.
my sister said to me once, she said, you have to remember that this is not happening to you. It's happening for you. You know, when you're in a bad situation.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
How do you do that though? Because that's extremely difficult. And
You just say it out loud.
yeah, that's true. I mean, I think
No, seriously,
I think
a lot of times in the mirror.
it's a that's good practice. Yeah, that's probably really good, because you were, you know, like bringing up Mitch again. We were talking. We were doing a video on Ecclesiastes when we got that message from Cal recently, where he's just, kind of going through some stuff. I'm not going to share any of that. But then immediately we had just talked about the Chinese farmer too, and we were just kind of like, how do you tell someone to just Chinese farmer their way through this? It's like, it's when the pain hits you, it really hits you, and it's hard to
Well,
deal
this
with
is
when
the
it.
thing. Yeah, I don't think you do. You're like, we always feel the need to fix things, right? Like, and so somebody who's suffering, we want to fix whatever's ailing them. And sometimes that's good. I mean, if they have a disease or they're sick and they need nursing back to health, and but some things they just have to go through, and they need someone to go through them with, and I think that's it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
That's it.
yeah.
You know?
What is that called when Job's friends, the thing they
Sitting
did
Cheetah.
well? Yeah, the thing they did well in the book. Books,
When
they
they were
started out
quiet.
good. Yeah.
When they were quiet.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, like, that's the one thing about that book too, is I think that's why I really appreciated your guys' look at it, because you're trying to come at it from a lot of different angles, and even angles that you didn't necessarily agree with, you would bring up. And so it's like some people see it this way, um because like I told Jess before, it seems like every time I hear someone talk on the book of Job, it's always unsatisfying or rubs me the wrong way. And one of the things I've heard people do in the past is they'll completely throw out everything his friends said, because they'll be like, see, God rebukes him at the end, so there's no truth in anything they said. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily right, because you actually read some of the stuff and God actually repeats a few things they say. And so you're like,
Mhm.
there's actually uh they're just, I don't know how to describe them. I guess they're just mean. They don't speak rightly of God, but it's like they don't convey, I think, his character or his love. But there is like wisdom in some of their words. And so it's like you kind of have to pay attention when you're reading the book. And yeah.
Mhm.
Well, like they'll say something like God will restore you and give you more than you had before. That's literally what happens. But they
Yeah.
were totally wrong about the
The way to
situation.
get there. The way to get there, right?
Yeah, or even they didn't assess anything correctly, but they
Mhm.
ironically were able to say something that had some sort of truth to it, like Job would be rewarded and restored, but it wasn't in the way they thought or how it sort of came about. Like when like people so all right. So there was a comment on one of the videos, and the comment, it was actually a great comment, but part of it was like Job is kind of a dangerous book, and especially for people that are suffering. And I'm just like, I don't have that, you know, I don't have that sense about the book.
Yeah,
I think there's interpretations of it that are dangerous for people that are suffering, but the
right.
book itself is not dangerous for people that are suffering.
No.
And I think for me, I think the book itself is actually meant to bring healing,
Yes.
because Job gives voice to basically everything that someone who suffers goes through, and God doesn't condemn him. So that right there, like, because like when someone's going through a tough time, they'll think, okay, what did I do wrong? And then Job is so great because there's sometimes we do things that are wrong that will cause us to suffer, and we can kind of figure those out. But then there's those times when we're suffering and we're like, maybe I did something wrong and I don't know and I need to figure it out. But Job gives us a great, you can be just like, no, sometimes you suffer and there's
No
nothing
reason.
you did. You didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to try to find a reason. And so that there is super, I think, super helpful. And then another thing that's helpful is that you're like, well, God's doing this for a reason. But that's only in retrospect. You only get to find out the reason at the end. You can't fathom the reason when you're going through it. And even at the beginning, God says to Satan, why did you cause me, or why did you entice me against Job without reason? And so even the reasons that are given there's no reasons. Like there's something to be said about the fact that there's no reason to suffer. Like there's no, like, one of the worst things you can say to someone who's kind of going through something is like, oh, this is all for a reason. And sometimes people, when they're suffering, will say that to themselves too. They'll be like, well, this is happening for a reason. I know that, but it's just difficult. You'd be like, you don't have to say that.
No.
You can demand a reason. You can
Face
ask
to
for
face.
it.
Yeah.
You can seek it, but you don't have to believe that there's a reason, especially for something just tragic and terrible.
Well,
Like you
you
can
know,
just be like, there is no reason. And this is the first thing Job says is like, I wish I was never born. There's no justification for any of this. Like, and he's vindicated for that. Like, I think Job's
yeah,
right.
yeah, because
Now, that's not the whole thing, because Job, everything makes sense once you get to the end, or everything will have a reason eventually, but in right now. Like, and so I was talking to a guy I know, and he had lost his son, not recently, like several years ago, but he's still like dealing with all this. And it was like close to his son's birthday and stuff. And he, like, I shared some of just those things with him. Because like just the idea that you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to find like a silver lining. You don't have to, you don't have to, then people feel guilty for how they react. They're like, oh, I'm not trusting God enough. You don't have to do any of that. You can, yeah, I just shared some of that stuff with him, and he cried, and I cried with him. And, like, I felt like it was a good conversation.
yeah,
And he opened up and he started sharing all this stuff. Like, I could tell, like, it wasn't like I preached to him or whatever, and then like trying to fix the situation. I basically was like, yeah, it sounds like you're going through it, man. And then shared how Job cried out, how there was no reason for his suffering, this kind of stuff. And then in response to that, he just started sharing all these things about his son.
mm,
And I mean, like, I still don't, like, I think the book is there to help people. I think
it is there
some
to
of, yeah, So
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to share that because I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's not like it works. It's not like it works because that's not the point. The point is not for something to work or to get fixed or whatever. It's just what is, and
Yeah.
it's just how it is. And to give voice to that, it's, I don't know. I mean, you can see how emotional I am about it. It's just like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's powerful in such a, in yeah.
Yeah, when I saw that comment saying that it was such a dangerous book, the way I understood it was that it's a dangerous book because it doesn't, it begs all the questions, right? Kind of thing.
Right.
And but maybe that's not what he was talking. Maybe he was talking about. Yeah, I don't know. But like that things can happen without a reason. I get this sense that like the Satan doesn't like mankind. He doesn't like God's plan to use mankind as a mediator. He doesn't think mankind is worth the effort. He thinks that we're weak, right? And maybe he's even jealous because he's like the best of all angels, right? And why didn't he get chosen for this job? And that's where God keeps just saying, my strength is made perfect in weakness. My strength is made perfect in weakness. And the one thing that we do really well is suffer. Like, if you think about it's true. We do it really well.
Number one in suffering, human being.
Human beings. Like we excel at it. Like, somebody who's close to me was telling me about their childhood, and they recently found out that they had been terribly abused, but because it was so terrible, they had repressed all the memories, so they didn't, and now the memories are slowly kind of coming back because they were informed that this and this had happened to them more than once, and she said to me, well, how is that even possible? Like, why do we do this? And I said, because we're really good at this. We're good at suffering. We're good at making the worst case scenario our normal. I also know of another woman who was terribly abused from infancy till she was 17 years old, right, by an alcoholic. And she didn't know that it wasn't normal. And she went to school and she was happy. I mean, has suffered since, because she suffered from the trauma of what that does to a person, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it does something to you. But the thing is, like I said to this other person who talked to me about their repressed memories, and I said, you have to remember that nobody gets away scot-free from this life. We all suffer, okay? And somehow that is making us, right? And we get to exercise our free will at some point, and we get to choose if we're going to continue to ascend, transcend, or descend, right? Which in a sense doesn't really matter, because it's not a straight line, it's a circle. So at some point you're going to ascend anyways. Like, if you go down, you're coming back up somewhere, right? So I'm not saying this as comfort to someone who's suffering, you know, but I did say to her, because she actually came to that conclusion on her own. She said, I just realized that this is the journey that I'm making. This is my life. And I said, that's right. That's exactly what it is. It's your life. And look at who you are today. She's an amazing person, you know? And all of that contributed to what I'm looking at right now. Somehow it did, you know? Yeah.
But does this, I guess I have a question here. Because when we started the conversation, I used the word offended, and maybe that wasn't the right word to use either. Because it seems like even in all the suffering, um, when it works the best is when we stay grateful. And that's kind of when,
Well,
and like
that's the thing.
your friend was staying grateful.
Mhm.
And I guess maybe the word I should have used is like maybe resentful or something. Like you have opportunities in your suffering to become resentful. And then you're no longer like mediating at that point. It seems like you're
Well,
just,
that's why when Peter said resentment and bitterness is the road to hell, I was like, that's exactly right. That's the descent.
yeah,
When you take that road, right? And you always have that choice. You have the choice, am I going to be grateful
yeah.
and walk in humility? I mean, think of David,
Mhm.
King David, who was king while he was hiding, right? He was
Yeah.
king while he was walking through the valley of the shadow of death. So, you know, I think what the gratitude does is it just it puts you on God's timeline in a sense. If you realize that everything is a gift, then you're willing to wait for it to arrive. You know,
Yeah.
you're you're not you just know it's coming. You know, like you get to exercise faith and patient, long suffering. Like these are the gifts of the spirit, right?
Mhm.
And that's what, when you realize everything is a gift and you live that way, you can do that, I think.
I always say these things that are just so quotable. I like that gratitude puts you on God's timeline. That's really good. Then there's what's this? I was trying to look up this line because you said when you're grateful, like there's another thing you said. It said you know that something good is coming. And it reminded me of course George McDonald again. Trying to read it right now. I think it was in Fantasties, and he says, "Yet I know that good is coming to me. That good is always coming.
Yes.
Though few have at all times the simplicity and the courage to believe it. What we
Mhm.
call evil is only and best shape, which for the person in his condition at the time could be assumed by the best good, and so farewell."
Amen.
But yeah,
And George says it again in the best possible way.
I know. Like
Dang it,
he
George.
inspires me to write, but then at the same time, you kind of I'm just like I could never like
Can't compete with him.
yeah.
It's not possible because he's not even human, in my
I
opinion.
know, I know.
Right.
I'm like maybe I can just write something and then like just whatever I write is directing people to him. Because I'm like, but this person said it better. Go read his books. Yeah. And he was tapped into something very special. But
You know what he was tapped into? Suffering.
the suffering. Yeah.
He lost children. He was sick. He got kicked out of his parish. Nobody liked him. He didn't have any money.
Yeah.
He was tapped into, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And, you know, not to compare myself to him or anything, but these are the lessons you learn when you suffer. You know, these are the deeper lessons,
Mhm.
actually.
Yeah.
You know, you may learn to get through and you may learn to manage and you may learn, you know, and those are great tools for the rest of your life. But the deeper lessons are all those fruits of the Holy Spirit, right? Because you how do I put it? Well, I've said it like there's only one reality. There's only one end of the story. There's only And you're on your way
Mhm.
you're getting there, right? You'll be fine, even when it's not good.
There was, I don't know why this is coming to mind, but I was dating this girl. We dated for like, I don't know, like 6 months or something. It wasn't very long. And she broke up with me. And so I was very sad about it. And I was at home and oh, Sherry disappeared.
I'm listening. I'm into
I was
this.
at home and my dad like was like, "Hey, you want to talk?" And so I was sharing about it. I started crying, of course. And so I shared just what happened, how she broke up with me, and like my dad just was like laughing. He's like, "You'll be all right." Like laughing about, and I, like at the time I was like kind of like, I was
It's
like,
not
doesn't he know
funny.
how like heartbreaking this is? But I could
Yeah.
also see like his levity in the moment. He just had a bigger perspective of things. He's
He
like,
knew something you didn't know. Yeah.
yeah, and he just laughed, and uh I still think that's hilarious. But I found that like my boys are just starting to be teenagers, so they haven't had any serious relationships with girls or anything. But I remember there'd be times when they were like crying about something, and I'd laugh and be like, "All right, it'll be okay. We're good." And they're like, uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think learning through suffering, I don't know, just that staying grateful is key. And you can learn so much through that if you're able to do that. It's hard too, because even talking about earlier when we were talking about the kind of learning from people in poverty and stuff too. I find, I guess is maybe this is just personal, but I find like myself, there's uh I I can get very complacent very easily in my things or in my routine or whatever. And I find like when I have less, there's almost less uh I don't know, I guess you could say less clutter. Like even in my mind, it's like less to worry about. Like even if
mhm,
I have like it, I maybe because it's just less responsibility too or something. If you have less to
right,
take care of or something, I don't know, which is probably isn't a good thing. But I don't know. But even so, like even fasting, like trying to fast in my personal life, there's a difference though. Like I feel like I learned a lot through that, and there's a way where you can even identify with people suffering. Because when we were in Ukraine, one of the guys there was talking about how he had to grow up, and he was talking about how him and his siblings sometimes they'd go 3 days without eating or anything. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, I know what that's like because I've done that. But then at the same time, I don't know what that's like because any moment when I'm fasting, I could go to the fridge and get something if I wanted to. Like I've never been in the position where you can't and you don't know when your next meal could even be there. And it's like
right,
there's like a there's something to where it's not quite the same, um but there is something where it's almost nice because in a small way I can at least maybe identify and empathize with that more or something. But I don't know, there's something I think to the mediating aspect of suffering. And like you mentioned, Jess, with the book of Job, I wouldn't think that I my thought would be totally with you. I wouldn't think like the other guy. I would think total opposite. I would think this is Job is the suffering man. So if you are suffering, this would be the book to go to because you would
right.
it would resonate with you. And I don't know. I don't know that it uplifts you like you said. It just kind of is, but it's something
But you have
should.
to really spend time with Job in order to, get something. Like if you're gonna read the Bible like I think a lot of people do, where they just want a word of encouragement,
Mhm.
it's like their daily devotions or whatever.
Yeah,
Job is not the book to go to. It isn't because you don't get an answer.
yeah,
No,
And
in
yeah,
that's
fact,
your
it
answer.
yeah,
That's
it
your
can be more
answer.
confusing and it can be like discouraging.
Right.
yeah.
And that's your answer. And that's why, like, in response to that guy's comment when he said it's a dangerous book, especially for the suffering. I agreed with him because he said it's like dynamite, right? Because it
Mhm.
blows up everything that you and you've seen that, Jess, and I've seen it where people either completely ignore the book of Job. Oh yeah, you know, I think Jacob has said that anytime I bring it up. So I've never studied that book, and I always want to go, why not?
Yeah.
Or they say, I hate the book of Job. Right? I
Yeah.
can't stand it. I don't like it.
I have a friend
It's
who's
not
just
comfortable.
cannot stand it. He's like, this is the worst book. God's gaslighting Job, blaming him. Like,
It's a yeah, it's kind of weird. I get that response a lot too. Like my favorite book is Ecclesiastes, then Job is in my top 5 for sure. But it's always like, why'd you like those books? Like, yeah.
yeah.
At least it kind of ends well though. Like, you guys familiar? Psalm 88. I heard this somewhere, but I don't know if it's the only psalm. But it definitely is one where it ends and it just ends bleak. Like there's nothing good about it.
Oh.
It's one of those where like you read through and it's because I know people when they're going through suffering. A lot of people I think instead of reading Job, they'll resonate with the Psalms a lot because of everything David went through and but this one is just kind of like, why are you doing this, God? And then the last line, because usually the Psalms are kind of like that, but then at the end he'll kind of praise and he'll be like, but you're still my God, or it's somewhat uplifting. But this one, it's like, loved one and friend you have put far from me, and and my acquaintances into darkness. And that's like the last line of it. It's just like just keep going down, and then like, all right, well there you go.
Well, Jess, this was in the chapter in Meditations on the Tarot this morning that I read, and when I read it, I thought of you. I wanted to share it with you.
Be nervous. You should be
Nervous?
nervous. No, I'm just kidding. She's like, when I read this, I thought of you. I'd be nervous. What's it gonna say?
No, no.
No, I
It
just know
says, I know this
he'll
guy is a total jerk, and it reminded me of you.
no, I know he'll enjoy those.
Oh, okay.
Tradition teaches, and every serious esotericist and occultist knows that it is so, that the Archangel Michael is the archistrategist, i.e., that he directs the celestial army. Why is he in charge? Because his faith, hope, and love are such that they have put him in charge. For to be in charge signifies in the spiritual world to be less subject than others to doubt, despair, and condemning judgment. Will you condemn me just so that you can be right? Right? Tradition teaches that the Archangel Michael represents the sun. Oh, hang on a second. I have to. My shingles is acting up, and when that
Oh,
happens,
no.
it's in my chest, and yeah, anyway. Okay. The moon, the Archangel Raphael, Mercury, the Archangel Anael, Venus, Zachariel, Jupiter, Orpheus. Anyways, it goes through. Why the sun for Michael? Because the sun is the visible symbol, the image of faith, hope, and love. It sheds light on the good and the wicked without leaving or quitting its central post. Yes, the greatness of God himself, i.e., of what is divine for us in him, is not his power in the sense that he is stronger than the totality of forces in the universe, nor his foreknowledge in the sense that he foresees, as a perfect engineer, the future functioning of the forces of the world machine, pre-calculated and predetermined, nor even the fact that he is absolutely indispensable as the center of all gravitation, spiritual, psychic, and physical of the universe. No, what is truly divine in God, i.e., what makes every knee bow before him, is his faith, his hope, and his love. For
Well, that's
just as
good.
we believe in God, so also does God believe in us. But with a divinely greater and more elevated faith, his hope with regard to this immense community of free beings that we call the world is infinite, just as his love for these beings is infinite. And this is why I said that Satan would like to think that we shouldn't suffer. Jesus shouldn't suffer, right? That's what Peter said. And Jesus said to him, get behind me, who?
Satan.
Right. And what are we really good at? we're really good at suffering. We do not worship God because he is able to do more than us, or because he knows more than us, but rather because he has more faith, more hope, and more love than us. Our God is infinitely noble and generous, and not only all-powerful and all-informed. God is great through his faith, hope, and love. And the fear of God is basically that of offending such nobleness and generosity. So, and I truly believe that this is exactly why God was able to say, "Have you seen my righteous servant Job?" Because he has faith in us, and hope and love.
Yeah.
And he knows we can handle it. He knows what's happening. He knows the process. Remember how I've always put it, Jess? He knows the process.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and we see that in the book of Job, how God has to trust Job, because the accusation laid against Job is Satan says, well, of course he's righteous because you have a hedge of protection around him and you bless him. So he's basically leveling the accusation. He's like, Job's not actually righteous. He doesn't actually love you. He's doing it because it pays off. And the reason why it pays off is because you're protecting him and you're controlling everything. And so basically God stops protecting, God stops controlling.
Mhm.
And so what is, people like to say like, oh, God's always in control. Now, I think that's true, but it's not on the on the level of this sort of God's not manipulating everything. It's exactly what you're talking about, Shari. Like he has hope and faith and love in everything. And that's like a much deeper level of he actually trusts that he's like, do it. And I trust that Job will come through with this.
And this is where it gets to that withdrawal, right? In order to withdraw, he has to have faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
Right?
And what happens in the end? God's justified in the end too, but Job is even more glorified as well. Like it's not like God smashes Job and then is like, hey, aren't I great? It's like everything gets more glorified.
Except for, I mean, who's the loser in the book of Job? I would say it's Satan. Because everything that he said would happen did not happen. It actually was glorified. Like it was magnified.
Yeah, well, and even the friends are
Mediated.
humbled. Yeah, and what was their main thing is they shared that same sort of distrust, unfaith in man. They're just like, man's a moth. He's going to get crushed.
Yeah.
It's best just to like, let's stick to our role. Let's appease God. Let's not, let's not do anything rash or stupid because they had the low view of man. And it was God and Job that sort of had this higher view of who man is.
Yeah. Yeah, what is it the Spirit says, Jess? There is no one righteous. I grew up in a Calvinist, like maybe, I don't know what the difference is. Hyper Calvinist, to me it's all the same. I heard that all the time. There's no one righteous. No one. Right?
Yeah. The Spirit in the dream says, can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his maker? Even in his servants he puts no trust, and his angels he charges with error. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is that in Romans that says that?
No one righteous.
You know, Jason?
Let's try. I'll find it. I'm on it.
You're supposed to be a
There's none.
Bible.
I know.
A Bible
I should quote it,
encyclopedia.
right? Yeah. That reputation is going to get me in trouble. I don't know where it is, but I know what you're talking about.
I could
He
Google
says
it real
there's
fast.
I'm looking here.
There's none righteous. No, not
But
one.
but I feel like isn't that a problem with the way like we frame the gospel, where we
Yes,
frame it
it is a frame problem.
we frame it, and we want, when it gets framed to the denigration of man, like it's this weird thing where like the friends, in their desire to speak highly of God, they denigrate man to a level where there's this infinite gap between man and God, and there's nothing, like everything's hopeless, if you consider it in those terms.
Yeah.
Right. When you say the word gap, like in Ezekiel, where God's looking for someone to fill the gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens to be a human being. See, this is the thing. There is a gap, but it's only the human being that fills it. So that's Romans 3:10-12. There is no one
Oh, and
righteous, not even one. There is no.
it's actually a quote from the Psalms.
Yeah, Psalm probably 14, 1-3, or 53,
Yeah,
1.
it's quoting Psalm 53, 1 or 14.
Yeah,
I
the
think it's
fool says in
both.
his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, their deeds are vile. There is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from. Oh, interesting. I never checked that. The fool says, there is no one who does good. And then 53, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt and their ways are vile, and there is no one who does good. God looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. Everyone has turned away, all have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. So God looks down looking for the guy to fill the gap. Anybody. It's kind of that story of Lot, Abraham, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Where Abraham's like, well, what if there were 10 righteous men? What if there was just one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And Abraham's pleading on their behalf in a way too, even before God goes there.
Yeah.
Because I think to me, that seems like the thing is God's looking for that one to stand in the gap between him and creation. Because if God is perfect or ideal, it's like that. I think you said this, Sherry. When he just shows up, and that'll just like it'll obliterate you in a way, because it's just the glory of him is, oh, when love is right before you, it's just like it's kind of all consuming, and his love and it is his fire, and so it's trying to think of the right way to say this. It's like I'm always talking about truth and mercy, but it's just kind of like if the truth is there, if you have the ideal, so something is very, you just see it in all its perfection. It's like it needs a mediator to get to it, and it has to kind of uh it has to be connected through something, and it's through something like a self-sacrificial spirit, a spirit of love, because otherwise um whatever is the ideal will judge what doesn't live up to it, and whatever is, and so it kind of has to die to itself, or it has to have this mediating force to be able to pull one to the other, because it's like the I don't know, it's just he needs, yeah, there has to be the mediator. He's looking for that. God's searching for man, to find the man to reconcile all things back into himself. It's like this constant pulling, it's constant mediating of trying to pull things back together. But the hard part is like it's not only just being mediated, being reconciled back to God. It's like you have to be reconciled back to each other too. It's like this. I can't see it any other way at this point. Like it has to, being reconciled back to God is being reconciled back to your brother as well. Um, because if we're all found in God, I don't know how God can be all in all if we're not mediating for each other. And so I think that's what he's looking for. He's looking uh for you to die to lay down your life for your brother. Because I mean, I would think I'm not a father, so I don't know, but I would think if a dad showed up and was gonna even just as pay an example, if he just showed up and his son had done wrong, so he was gonna punish his son, and then his other son stepped in and said, I'll take the punishment for him. I would think that would almost please the father in a way to see the brothers so tightly knit that they're willing to lay down their life for one another. I don't know. It could just be, like I said, I'm not a father, so I don't know.
I don't know. I think as a mother, I'd be like, no,
No, no,
no, I
no.
want your brother. I want him now.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want that to happen. But I don't know. I was reading.
I couldn't punish an innocent person. I couldn't do
No,
it.
no, I don't think you would. I think it's just the spirit of it. The heart of it is. To me, it's. I don't know, and that's.
I mean, we like that idea in Christianity because that's what we think Jesus did, but he didn't do that. I just had this long conversation with my nephew about apocatastasis, and he said something like, well, Jesus, what, Jesus wiped away all the sin and sacrificed himself. And I'm like, no, Jesus trampled death by death. That's a totally different thing. In my opinion, I don't see how any of that. I know there's a lot of that language, but I don't think that's what Paul's talking about. But it gets interpreted that way. And there's something more mysterious going on. And I don't mean mysterious in a way that you can't know it, but mysterious in a way that's very spiritually profound.
Yeah, I'm not. I hope I'm not sounding that way. Like I'm not trying to paint it as like God had a bloodlust and Jesus had to fill it. I don't think it's. I hope that's not how it's coming across because I don't
No,
believe that at all. I think it's just um any act of forgiveness is kind of dying to yourself. And so in any act of forgiveness is you kind of taking someone else's sins upon you. So I think in that way, I guess that's how I usually describe it, where Jesus took, you could say he took our sins upon us or whatever. It's the same as like if I were to um forgive or best one of the best examples I know
what
to
if
relate
what
it
if
to
you
is
thought? I wonder what you think of this. I'm just throwing this thinking out
yeah.
loud. What if forgiveness is actually incorporating the other person into your own self?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because what it is it's a show of empathy, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And what came to my mind is in this chapter here, he talks about ghosts. And he talks about ghosts as astral bodies, and astral bodies are electricity. Okay, so you get this residual electricity that's left behind when somebody leaves the earth. Can happen. And he describes them as being maniacal because they kind of just repeat the same. It's kind of like there's this residual action that gets left in the world and it just keeps happening. Like, so there's things that go bump in the night every night, and or it says the same thing, or it's wearing the same dress or whatever, right?
Older brothers marry first.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's from this book that we read.
Yeah.
Oh.
But anyway, he says that there are ways to get rid of them, and one of them is to breathe. So this is something occultists do, and he doesn't recommend it because you get an electric shock because it's electrical.
Mhm.
So he said you breathe the ghost in, and then there will be this show of gratitude from the person, the soul of the person who died, because they couldn't get away because of this residual electricity that was, keeping them stuck, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
there's there's something about forgiveness in there to me for some reason,
I think you're right.
because right.
I think so. Like it reminds me of Christ where he says, your sins are forgiven you. And then they say, who can forgive sins but God alone? And he's like, well, man can forgive sins. And so
Yeah.
to me, it would almost be like saying to that ghost, like, it's fine. Your sins are forgiven you or something like that. And then there's
Mm.
this release. And so
That
it
you breathe it into yourself.
yeah, it's
So
there
it's almost like a spiritual embrace,
yeah. Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. There's something to that. Like that's why I think the book of Philemon, there's this line where, and it's kind of, it's in this legal format or something, like you can kind of get into that, but where Paul says in there, he says, receive this person back as a brother, and if he has done anything to wrong you, put that on my account. And that always stood out to me, put that on my account. And it feels like I don't want to say you're necessarily doing that, but where you're receiving, incorporating this, it's kind of like I'm, I don't know, at least I don't know that you're absolving someone. That's going to sound so bad coming out of my mouth, absolving someone of their sins, but there's a way like where you, I don't know, I think, yeah, I think you are reincorporating someone, not only within yourself, but when you reincorporate someone back into yourself, then they're reincorporated back into the family, they're reincorporated back into the community and back into the whole. It's like everything is being connected back together. And so if one man will stand in the gap for one other man, it's like they'll start to get pulled back in one by one and reincorporated into everything. Because you could continually, like, everybody could scapegoat one person and cast him out. Like even with Hitler, like you could use that as an example. But if one man just said, no, this is my brother. Like I'll like, you can damn him all you want. He needs to be punished for his sins, whatever, but he's still my brother. So I'm still gonna have some sort of cord to him. Like if someone's willing to stand in that gap, I think, no matter how long that takes, I think eventually things will be reincorporated and made whole and back and be made right. Because I don't necessarily see how things are made right if there isn't a sense of forgiveness, like with repentance working there. And I think it's when the to me, I just see it as the resistance of that. Like, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. Like, even if you were, I don't know the whole ghost thing, because I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but I'm trying to relate it. But like, even if you were trying to say to this ghost or whatever, like, um, I forgive you. Like, I'm gonna breathe you in and receive you back. It's like if they resist that, it's like there's still this torment going on for them or something. It's like not until they turn back. Repentance is as in turning, like you talk about, like just kind of a coming back. Not until they come back and let you receive them back will they actually be released and resolved and at peace and shalom. It's like there's this
Well, the way I understood it, maybe I don't have it right, but in the book, I don't think they have much of a choice. Like, you just determine that you're breathing this ghost in,
oh
right? You're
yeah,
gathering it in, and it's some form of electrical, residual electrical energy. So I don't even know if it's the whole person. It's kind of a part of the person,
yeah.
and it's got them snagged, and they can't continue their journey until somebody takes care of this snag.
This is incredibly fascinating. I like this though, but I do, for some reason it strikes me as I'm trying to play with
But
it
when
because
you
it
were
strikes
talking
me with
about,
forgiveness too.
yeah, when you were talking about forgiveness, because see, I think about everything as incarnation anyways, right? So like when you think about the man standing in the gap, or Job as a mediator, what
Mhm.
he's doing is he's bringing back into contact, right? Into contact so things can touch. That's why the gap for me is, it's a place where nothing can touch, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
That's what it is. And when you have a mediator, suddenly
yeah.
things can touch again. And you could say connected, but why don't we think about it as actual touching? And so if you imagined everyone in the world holding hands, what would they become? They would become a body of people, right? Like, we would even call them a body. And so, and that's incarnational to me, so forgiveness is like breathing in that ghost, that residual electrical energy. It's I think it's a similar act, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that in order to forgive someone you have to breathe them into yourself, but
Yeah. I
but
know. Yeah, I get you.
but my daughter said to me when she was like 3.5, I tucked her into bed and everything. And when I was leaving the bedroom, and she goes, "Mommy, wait." And I said, "What?" She goes, "I love you so much. I could breathe you into my eyes." Right?
That's nice.
I
That's
know.
lovely.
Ah.
And I thought, that's what you want to do, though, with someone you truly love. You want to crawl inside of them. You
Mhm,
want to be incarnated in them,
mhm,
right? Somehow.
mhm.
Have you guys ever seen Spirited Away?
A long
No,
time
but I've heard
ago.
about it. I've heard about it. I heard it's really good.
Like as you guys are talking, all I'm thinking about is that
Spirited.
movie. So like the premise of the movie is there's a little girl, she ends up getting lost, and then she kind of gets transported to the spirit realm, and then she ends up at this bathhouse. So it's in, I mean, it's anime, so it's like it's in Japan, and so there she's in this bathhouse trying to work because her parents get turned into pigs, and so she's like trying to figure out what to do. So they say, well, so and so can help you, but you have to get a job to stay here. You can't just or you'll disappear or whatever. Anyway, she's working in the bathhouse, but there are all these spirits that come in, and they're all kinds of weird creatures and stuff, and they're coming to get washed at the bathhouse. And then, but she never judges anything like good or evil or whatever. She just sort of sees things as they are, which kind of makes her character. And she has, and she's not like a perfect, like she's not like she's very immature at the beginning, and then as she goes through the movie, she sort of grows up. But there's like this spirit comes, and it looks like this gigantic slug, and like all the slime's like coming off of it and stuff, and it's crossing the bridge going to the bathhouse, and everyone that works at the bathhouse, all the creatures and people that work there are freaking out. They're like, "Oh no, it's a stink spirit," and it like smells terrible, and everyone's like leaving and running away, but they can't stop it because it's so big, and it's just like slowly just like moving towards the bathhouse. So they, so she's working there. They like make her name's Sin in the movie. So they're like, make Sin do it. So they make her take care of this gigantic, ugly monster, and they put her in a large bath, or put the monster in the bath, and then she pours water on it, and like ends up what happens? I don't know. Anyway, she ends up like she's like, oh, there's something wrong. Like she senses like there's something wrong here. It's not a stink spirit. And she gets like grabbed by it or something, and she feels like she's like, oh, there's like a thorn. It's got a thorn in it. So she starts yanking on it, trying to pull the thorn out. So she has like this empathy because she's like, I know what it's like to have a thorn. I would I so she starts pulling on it, ends up being like the handlebar of a bicycle. And she pulls out this whole bicycle that's connected to all this other trash and garbage and whatever. And as soon as she starts pulling it, it just goes and like explodes out of this monster. And like all this trash and mud and gunk and like everything comes pouring out. And it turns out it was actually like this river spirit that was like all polluted and stunk up. But then like once she pulled that out, like it was clean again. And then like it ends up giving her like this seed. And it like thanks her, and then it like flies away, and it's like a dragon. It's like swooping through the sky or whatever. But like no one else in the bathhouse could do that. And she didn't want to take care of it. She was kind of forced to, but she wasn't like, oh, this is terrible, I just gotta like, I don't know. She didn't. And then there was another one where this no face monster who doesn't like have an identity. It's like got a mask on. It's like a ghost, and no face
I have to
comes
watch
in.
this movie.
It's so good. It's so
Well,
freaking good. But she does the same thing with No Face. Like No Face turns into like this, he starts eating stuff, figures out that people want gold. And so he starts just like gold just appears in his hands. And so everyone in the bathhouse is like, let's go. We got to get some gold. And like, so everyone in the bathhouse is like serving this spirit, and he's like getting bigger and bigger and just eating everything. And like, and like he wants to, I don't know. Anyway.
it's great.
And this is the one that has no face, that's just eating everything?
Yeah, so
Or
he's got a mask and he's like just devouring everything, but then he's like he offers Sin some gold. He's like, "Huh?" And she's like, "No," because all she wants is her parents back. She doesn't care about the gold or whatever. And so and then eventually like this starts driving the monster crazy because he can control everything except for her.
Yeah.
And so he like anyway, she ended up taking the seed from the river spirit and then feeding it to him. And then he ends up like throwing up everything that he ate. And so he returns back to normal size. But she's like, you can just come with me, just follow me. And he like just starts following her around and goes on the adventure with her. And eventually he gets a job.
I have to watch this movie.
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
How do
Yeah, I
people
don't know if
come
that
up
made
with
any
this
sense to the
stuff? This is
description, but
it's
I
amazing.
love that movie.
Sounds like one of your dreams, Jess.
I know, right?
Yeah,
But
that's
like
really
I was
cool.
thinking about that when you were talking about breathing the spirits in or something, and like because she like like especially with those two spirit characters, like she resolved something that was like a big problem, and it
Yeah.
wasn't obvious. Like everyone thought the problem was this was a stink spirit when actually it was a river spirit that had a thorn,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that was the pollution. And then the problem with No Face is he had nothing to do. He didn't know what his identity was, and she didn't either. She wasn't like forcing. She's like, "Come with me," and he ends up, yeah, basically getting a job and start doing things. He starts knitting, like all that stuff. Like No Face is knitting, and like he's just happy. He's like,
It's just so weird. I love stuff like this because like I would probably watch that and just have no idea what any of it was. And then later on in life it would hit me and I'd be like, oh, this is that thing with the stink spirit. Like I'm
yeah.
seeing
But
it again.
Miyazaki, he's so like intuitive. Like he won't even like finish a script. He like as the movie's getting made, they're like making creative decisions along the way.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And so like there's something like, you know, someone without an identity, they can become monstrous because they're just eating everything, just like this No Face spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it, you know, who knows what the seed was, something magical that she got from the river spirit. But he ends up like vomiting everything out. He's back to his non-identity. And then he just basically needs kind of like because she wouldn't give in to him. She wouldn't just do whatever he wanted, even when he was a monster. She's like, no, you just follow me, and ends up following her. And then it's like the little thing, like he like learns how to knit and take care of a house with this witch lady. But it's like if you don't have an identity, you just start small. You start with the little things. You learn how to do something little, and
Yeah.
Yeah, that
yeah,
that goes to that goes to the idea of um like I realized when you want to know who you are, a good way to do that is to ask, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Because it's only a certain person who wants to do a certain thing, right? So you can somehow, like this is totally psychological,
mhm,
but you know, for example, when I realized that I had, you know, this like creativity and conscientiousness, and I was equal in portion to both of those things. And I thought, well, I have to divide my time 50-50. What am I going to do? Then you have to really find out who you are
mhm,
to find out what it is that you want to do, right?
mhm.
Like what doing
Yeah,
anything are, you know, they're tied up in each other. So that's interesting.
like my older son is very he's very quiet and he's very introverted and he's very agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like when he's 16 now. So like when he was younger, you just told him to do something and he just does it. Like he doesn't like he basically just wanted to do stuff with people. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
all he wanted. Like he doesn't have any personal preference. He didn't have any idea like and of like what to do. And then because he didn't so like a friend would be interested in something, but because he wasn't interested except when he was around that friend, like he never did it otherwise. So he was never as good. Like if they're playing a game, he was never quite as good or coordinated or whatever. Like because it wasn't something he wanted to do. He just wanted to be with people. And so he ended up just doing all kinds of different stuff. We had him in soccer. We had him in, he was in band in school. He's still in band in school. But like, so last year was his freshman year. And he did a video production class. So I work in video production. So he's like, I want to do the video production class, because he's like, Dad does video production. And so he takes the class, and then like, it's not like I'm making animations and I'm doing editing and stuff, and the teacher that's teaching the class is like from a news background, so she has everyone like write a script and be on camera and record stuff for them on camera. And so because he's shy and stuff, he doesn't want to do that, so he basically just doesn't do assignments. And so like he's got an F in the class. And so me and my wife were like trying to think, like, he can't get an F in this class. So I'm like, well, I'll just pressure him until he gives in, because it's like, if I tell him he has to do it, he'll just do it, and it'll be good for him because he can just do the assignment and be on camera, and it'll be okay. Like, he'll just see that he'll be okay. And even if he doesn't want to do this, he can at least like go through that. He just refused. He was like, nope. And I was like taken back, because that's like not his personality. He's like always agreeable. And he said, he was like, he's like, I don't do these things. Or he was like, I'm not good at this. Like, he wasn't saying like, it wasn't denigrating. He's like, this is not me. I can't. And yeah, and he wasn't like saying it like, I can't do it. Like, he doesn't believe in himself. He's like, I'm not going to do it. And it was like, I was like simultaneously proud and frustrated, because I'm like, well, now he's gonna fail the class. And I was like, I guess that's what's just gonna happen. And I just told him, I was like, you're gonna fail the class, you know that. And he just sort of sat there, and there's, I just sort of, from there on out, I was like, I'm not gonna pressure him anymore. And if he fails it, there's no punishment or whatever.
Yeah.
So he ended up failing the class and didn't do it. But like, sometimes that's how it is. It's like, you don't know what you want to do. You don't know who you are or what to do. But so you just do a bunch of stuff, and eventually you'll run into things and you'll be like, that's not me. I'm not that type of person. I'm not that. And then, so he ended up wanting to try out for basketball last year. So same year, didn't get on the team because he'd never really practiced basketball or whatever. But for some reason, like, this was like, he's like, man, I really want to play. And so he's practiced every single day for basketball. And I don't play basketball. I don't know anything about basketball.
Yeah.
But he practices every day. He's done so for over a year now. He plays, practices. He was on a team this summer. He watches every game. He knows every player. He knows their numbers. He knows their stats. He knows like
he loves it. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's coming into his own.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah, it is.
And
it is.
So yeah, and sometimes you know what those things are, and they drive you, like the basketball thing for him. And sometimes it's like, the things that you aren't. You're like, that is not me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see.
It is. Yeah.
I have a question for both of you, since I don't have kids. Because you said that it makes you proud to see him, I guess, find his own identity. I guess, is that because sometimes you see that, I think, happen through like rebellion, when kids will do that and they'll go off and find themselves and get into bad stuff. How does a parent feel in those situations? Is it hard?
Well,
I mean,
I think Jess just phrased it perfectly when he said proud and frustrated.
and when it's even when you
That's
see
it
them,
right
okay,
there.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, well, what are you, I remember my son he graduated from high school. He was leaving in 2 weeks to go to audio engineering school in Vancouver for 2 years. It was a 2-year program with no holidays. And he's he said to me, Mom, is it okay if I go camping with some friends at Till Lake, which is like 3 kilometers down the road from us? And then he goes, there's going to be girls there. And I said, you know what? I can't, it would be really dumb of me to say, you're not allowed. You're leaving in 2 weeks. You're going to be in Vancouver. Yeah, you're going to
There's
have to
girls in Vancouver.
start making your own decisions. That's what I said. And I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't tell them what to do every 5 minutes either. But and he was just standing there with his eyes like, and I said to him, I'll just tell you one thing. If any of those girls get pregnant, you're not going to the audio engineering school. Staying home looking after whatever you created.
Right.
That's what I told him. So make wise choices.
yeah.
But otherwise, have fun.
Yeah.
You know? I think anytime a kid exercises their own identity, it is rebellious. It always comes across to a parent like that. And there always has to be a moment where they say no to their parent.
Yeah.
Because essentially they're not you.
Mhm.
And the only way for them to make that clear is, or that, make it clear that they're not you, but also that they don't need your help to be themselves. Right? Because up to this point, they needed help all the time. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't need your help now. I know who I am and I'm not that, and I'm not doing it. Right? And
Mhm.
and if you're a wise parent, you'll do what Jess did. You'll tell him the truth and then you'll let him be who he is. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like good advice. It's the different scenarios scale all over. There's just so many different scenarios where it's hard because the one Jess brought up seems like you can almost just be appreciative of how your kid's acting in a way. But then
Yeah.
when you were telling the story of your son, at first I thought you were gonna say like that there was marijuana there or something instead of girls, or like there was drinking, and then it's a little bit more where I think you're kind of like, well, he's exploring. You don't know necessarily that he's finding his true self. And then I don't know. I have an aunt, and she hopefully she's still doing better now, but she um just always been like that. Always been extremely rebellious. Always been she was always drinking all the time. And then it got so bad where she got addicted to meth. And it's just like you watch somebody like that, and you're just like, are they
Yeah,
finding
that's
themselves? Are they even finding themselves anymore? Like, what's happening now? It's like
yeah, no, now they're in the clutches of
mm,
addiction.
yeah. And so you're not really proud anymore. You're just frustrated. But it's still like you said, I think you just tell them the truth, and then you still love them through it. But it's like you know that they're if they were trying to find who they are, they missed it somewhere on the way.
Well, the
'Cause
thing is, Jess's son still got an F. He still failed the class, and I'm sure at some point he's going to have to make up for that.
mhm,
Like there's always consequences to your actions,
yeah,
but you don't have to belittle someone in a case like that, I think,
that
where just as well as they do that
yeah,
they've discovered something about who they are,
that's really true. It's just hard. I can't imagine being a parent in that situation because it's hard. Because looking at my aunt, it's like kind of even gets into the Job thing a little bit too. Like she's able to touch the bottom of the barrel now. Like if when she comes back, it's like, she's almost able to reach the uttermost in a way, because she's like, she's been there. I've been living out of dumpsters. I've been selling myself, for drugs. It's like, uh, so there is an identity in that, because it's like you said those things, you did those things. But God's able to transform it into uh, something much more beautiful. I don't say that was, he can't really say that it was his intention or anything, but it's yeah, I like what you're saying. Like, there still is the F there, and it's like, and with my aunt, it's like you said those things. There's still consequences, but um, the redemption of those things is much more beautiful. It's even like with Adam in the story of the garden. It's like you talk about the fall of man, and it's like, or just the fall of humanity, and it's like, well, did you see his getting up? Like, it's like that's just almost more glorious. It's like then if he would have never fell, it's like, I think
Mhm.
that's what you're talking about. We suffer well. It's like, and we get back up, and that's what's fascinating.
It
Mhm.
is. Yeah. I think that's a good note to end on, because I should go, actually.
Okay. I did actually have a question for you guys to put you on the spot. I mean, I can end it there.
No,
We could do
no,
that,
no.
but okay. This is just kind of a random question. I'm just curious, but someone asked me this a long time ago, and I thought it was a good one. If there's one person in the Bible that you would get the chance to meet, that you'd want to meet, who would it be? Doesn't
Oh.
have to be your favorite necessarily, just one person that you think would be
Outside of
most.
Jesus?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that guy. We'll all
Wouldn't
get
know
to meet
who
him.
he was anyway.
You can meet someone in the Bible.
Yeah, like a character from the Bible that you think it would just be really interesting to meet him, or they'd want to meet the most.
Saint John.
Hmm.
What would you do? Do you have a reason why, or what would you ask him?
He was the only disciple that was at the cross.
Mhm.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
I don't know. I think David. I'd want to meet David. He's just my kind of guy. He was totally unpredictable.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
What about you, Jason? What do you want to say?
Moses. David and Moses would be my two. But David would be my top pick, and Moses would be my next.
I should have
Moses would be
chosen
really
some like
cool.
obscure king. King Jehoshaphat.
Yeah. Mine's a little obscure, but I really like that though. The David and Moses thing. I don't know why. I feel like maybe just because there's been more movies about him. I feel like I would have no idea what they would look like. Like I feel like if I actually met him, I'd be blown away. I'd be like, dude, this is not Charlton Heston. Like, what's going on here? Like, this is so strange. You can't be Moses. What's happening? But mine, when someone, I can't remember, it was years ago when someone asked me that, and it was probably the same answer. But I'm reading in Genesis again right now, so the question kind of came back to my mind, because what I answered him was it was Leah, because for some reason I've just always been in love with that one verse where it says that her eyes were tender, or her eyes were delicate, and I don't know why. I'm just like, that would just be. I don't know. It's just something about that verse where
You
I'm like,
want to
man,
You want to take her back to the
He
future with
wants
you.
to steal Leah.
yeah. Jacob didn't like her anyway. Just
You're like,
swoop in there.
I'll love you.
Yeah. You have pretty
For
eyes.
who you are.
Rachel's the one with the pretty body, but at least your eyes are cute. Well, for some reason that stands out to me. I'm like, I don't even know what that verse means, but I'd love to see the fact that if I believe scripture is inspired, that God would say of this one, her eyes were delicate, her eyes were tender. I'm like, just I don't know, something special about that to me. I don't know, but so that's mine. It's kind of obscure, but there's probably other ones. I'd like to find a really weird one too, though, like one of the weird kings. I don't know what it would be.
How about meeting Lot's wife?
Oh, that would be great
Pillar
too.
of salt. Good to
That
meet you.
That would be great. Yeah. That would
Too
be a great
soon?
one.
Too soon.
Well, this has been great, guys. Thanks for doing this. It's always fun talking to you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully this will happen more often. I'll be around.
I'll be around too.
Yeah, it looks like winter's actually the sun is shining right now. We had some snow this morning.
Really
So
cool.
winter is coming.
Yeah. When does it
It's like-
do you normally get snow this early or?
We can, but it doesn't usually stay on the ground. It's probably all
Okay.
melted now, but it's cold and wet out there. Very uncomfortable. And we've had really great weather up to this point. Warm and really nice.
Yeah.
So we'll see
Oh,
what happens.
I do have one more question, and you may know, you may not know, because you guys did the whole story in the Book of Job. But when I was reading in Genesis, it was giving the genealogy of Esau, and then it said Eliphaz was one of his heirs, and then it said that
Oh.
there's a chief. It's in chapter 36, and then it said, now Timnah was the concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. And then down it talks about there's a chief Teman. So like from where the I guess Temanites come from, or Temanites, because it says in Job
Interesting.
Eliphaz the Temanite or something like that. I didn't know if
Oh,
maybe it
wow.
was the same one. I have no idea.
Must be.
I think I read something that mentioned that, but I didn't look at it too deeply. But there are connections in the story, definitely between Jacob and Esau. And Job is kind of like a Jacob character because like
That's
um
interesting.
I can't remember the exact parallels, but it has to do something with like yeah, I can't remember right now. Like Yosef was talking to me about that. So
That'd be
there's
interesting.
there are parallels between those two stories. It'd be cool to like go through the story of Jacob and Esau and see if you could pull
would-
out some of those parallels with Job.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That's been coming up a lot for me lately. I don't know why, the Jacob and Esau thing. I was ranting at Cal about it the other day. But yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. That'd be interesting because then it made me wonder if the other two of Job's friends. I wonder if they were like maybe descendants of what are Lot's the two tribes that come from Lot? Because there's when Israel
Well,
is
apparently they're not Israelites, though. Job is not Israelite.
yeah, there's I think I've
So
heard that as well in the land of Uz or something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know the history of it, but
I just find it really fascinating that it, traditionally speaking, it's thought that Moses wrote the book of Job as a novel. And I heard that from a rabbi. And yeah, anyway, I find that really interesting.
yeah,
I could imagine Moses trying to work out that whole dilemma, of the righteous suffering. So
Yeah, it's when Moses
he
asks the
say?
question like
Yeah,
or show me when he says to God, show me your ways or show me your glory. It's like what's the wisdom in letting the righteous suffer,
yeah. And
basically.
yeah, because I mean, he, in his zealousness, he freed the people from Egypt into a life that wasn't great, right?
yeah,
And I mean, that's kind of what happened to Abraham too. He had to get up and go,
yeah.
right? And he made a lot of mistakes when he left. Did a lot of dumb things. Like Nate asked me that the other day on Meditations in the Tarot. He said, so if what does your moral conscience say about you just getting up and leaving? And I was like, well, I would say God told me to. I felt compelled to get up and go, He said, well, how'd that pan out for you? I said, not good. But it wasn't great for Abraham either. And if you think about it, it wasn't great for Moses either, right? Like, I think Moses would have had that burden on him because he was trying to do a really good thing for the people, right? To get them away from slavery and give them a place of their own. he never saw that come to fruition.
Mhm. Yeah.
Never got to see that happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Died on the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. And God buried him, and that always really touches me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I can imagine Moses really meditating on all of that a lot, just asking that question. I need an answer, right? Like Job. Yeah. Why do the righteous suffer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you both can talk about the book of Job unending. It's like you guys just
I know, right?
it's great. No, it's good. It's good. I love that it's the book has touched you both that deeply too. To be able to do that.
Job is everything. I say to Jess all the time. It's everything. That book.
Mhm.
It's all the things.
All the things. Yeah. Well, I can let you guys go. Thanks again for doing this. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah.
You're welcome. I'll send you the recording or whatever after it's
Yeah.
done its processing thing or something. So.
Yeah. I'll let you post it first so that the comments can kind of be there.
Okay. All right. Either way, it works for me.
Yeah.
right.
Let's do it on your channel.
Okay.
And
then you can post on yours or something too. Okay.
yeah, I'll just post it on mine eventually for just to have it archived or.
Cool. That sounds great. All right. Thanks, guys. You have a
Yeah.
great day. I'll see
You
ya.
too.
So yeah.
Bye, Jason.